Hi, and welcome to another episode of Healthy Living Resources. Today we're going to be talking about how to reacclimate now that the world is starting to reopen, so stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of Healthy Living Resources. I'm Amy Meehan, the Healthy People Program Specialist with OSU Extension, Family and Consumer Sciences in the state office. And today we're joined by Jami Dillifield, who is an educator in Hardent County, and we'll be talking about the importance of whole body wellness, especially during this time of reacclimation as the world is reopening. Thank you so much, Jami, for joining us. Could you share a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Thanks, Amy, for having me. I'm really glad to be here with everyone. Like Amy said, my name is Jami, and I am the Family and Consumer Sciences Educator in Hardent County. It's a small rural county in Northwest Ohio of about 33,000 residents. I have been employed with OSU Extension for about 6 years. Prior to that, I worked as a youth and children's pastor, so have about 20 plus years of experience working with families and helping people be the best that they can be. So healthy relationships is my area of expertise, and I really focus a lot on mental health, mental wellness. I'm also a Zumba instructor and a certified yoga instructor, and so fitness is also really important in nutrition in my life. I'm the mom of 2 adults. My daughter is a sophomore in college. My son is a rising freshman in college. So I'm soon to be an empty nester. Happily married for 25 years, almost 26. And just really grateful to be here with you all today to just have a conversation about what life looks like now and maybe some of the fears that we're having and some of the struggles that maybe we need to overcome as we move into real life again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jami. And it sounds like, your background is kind of perfect to have this exact type of discussion, because I think we've heard a lot of buzzwords, especially around mental health and mindfulness over this almost 2 years now. There are still a lot of places that aren't quite reopened yet, but as we're transitioning back into what it feels like to be fully open again, now that we've adjusted so much to being at home, whether we liked it or not initially, we were just talking about this, right? We got used to that routine. So what are some of your main concerns with readjusting and potential solutions that you might have to offer?
So one of the things I would like to point out right now is for anyone with families, the National 4-H Office has partnered with the Allstate Foundation, and there are some really wonderful social and emotional learning resources on the National 4-H page, and we can share that with you all later on. Many of them were written by people here at Ohio State, but also extension professionals from throughout the country to help your family if you have children, or honestly, even if you are an adult and don't have children. Sometimes we just need reminded of what that looks like to build a better friendship. And so I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. Recently, we had a community festival. Typically, it's where I grew up. Typically at this festival, everybody is like engaging with each other. People are hugging, we're catching up, we're seeing each other's children, we're seeing grandchildren, right? We're having a really great time. It was a very interesting experience as we all walked past each other. And after having really not engaged in person for the last year and a half, many of us just stood and kind of went, hi, right? And we weren't really sure what our next steps needed to be. So I thought maybe we could just talk a little bit about, one, how do you feel? How are you feeling inside? I'm an extroverted person, and being in my house and working from home almost did me in emotionally. I love people, and it was really hard for me to only see people online and to not be able to engage with individuals in person. But I find myself forgetting how to act to people. I want to use my phone, and you can't really see it because of the, green screen, but I find myself wanting to only talk to people in one dimension. And I find that that's probably going to be a struggle for a lot of us. So let's just have a conversation, right, about how do you make a friendship? How do you build being a friend? So the number one thing we want to do is, one, if you need to reintroduce yourself, hi, my name's Jami. Do you remember me outside of this little box, right?
And you might have changed over the last year too, right?
Personally, I have changed. I was able to engage in much more healthy eating, a better exercise routine because I was not sitting. I was able to get up and down. I was able to not be in meetings back to back to back. Or if I was in a meeting because they were here flat, right? I could sit or stand in a way. I could do yoga during a meeting and people didn't even know because I didn't have my camera on. So a lot of us are definitely adjusting, I think, to that as well, right? That maybe I don't look the same as I did because I was able to actually eat more healthy because I wasn't driving food or sitting in my car or having so many work lunches. Or I wasn't running my children 15,000 places because there weren't as many kids activities or as many sporting events. And if there were, they were limited. So, right, like we've a whole lot of stuff actually in this. So I think, Amy, if you want, we can talk about communication, then we can talk about healthy eating, and then maybe talk about just exercise, right? How do we build all of that back in as a family and as individuals during this time together, just to kind of give everybody an idea of where we're thinking we're headed. But communication wise, right? One of the things that hit me the other day as I reflected on our one-dimensional relationships over the last year is that so many times we are afraid to be vulnerable. So many times we're afraid to take that first step. And so what I noticed at the festival was I talked with one person. And the reason I talked to one person who was not in my family group was because she actually walked up to me and said, "Hey, oh my gosh, it's so nice to see you in person," instead of me just waving from a distance. Sure. And it's really interesting because as an extroverted person, I never, ever have a hard time saying to somebody, "What's up? How you doing?" I am definitely the loud one in the room typically, but I find myself being a little more timid because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that people aren't really going to want to engage with me now that we're in person, because sometimes my online presence is not necessarily my true presence, right? A lot of times online, we do a lot of rainbows and unicorns, and we post a lot of the old FOMO kind of like, look at me, my life is fabulous, and we forget it's real. And now that we're back in person, we're needing to be real again.
Definitely. I think that's the very common like social media trap that people fall into, that you have to present yourself in a certain way. And it's funny that we're talking about this because I'm an introvert. And so initially being able to stay at home and not see anybody, I was very comfortable with that. In fact, I really appreciated it, having kind of like a chance to take a breath. Now that said, this gave such a perfect opportunity, especially as a millennial who's very used to just texting versus calling people or anything like that, that I started Zooming with friends a lot more, FaceTiming with friends, reconnecting that way because that was all you could do. So people who I might not have seen in years because we lived in different places, now we're talking every week, which was great. And even people that I hadn't heard from in forever, it was just an easy way for me as an introvert, kind of hiding behind the screen a little bit, to be able to feel more comfortable to reach out to these people in very similar fears that you had about going out into people and seeing them in person and will they want to interact with me. I have a very hard time doing that in person. So online, it gave me an opportunity to try and realize that some of these people did want to engage more. And so I've had a lot of reconnections. So it's funny how like we just kind of did the reverse of each other over this 2-year period because you're an extrovert and I'm an introvert.
That actually is a really interesting thing too, because it also speaks to our generations. So I'll be 49 on Saturday, and I have no idea how to FaceTime somebody. Like I know I hit the button and I can make it work, but I would never think about setting up a Zoom meeting with a friend to see them face to face. I truly am just going to call them, put them on speakerphone and listen. So it is really an interesting, because I don't feel like I've really seen anyone, because I would never just FaceTime somebody. It's out of my comfort zone, even though I know the technology is there and I know how to use the technology. I mean, I have friends, well, some of my parents' friends don't even have smartphones, right? They still have flip phones because it's a generational thing. They only need it to call. Sure. So it's definitely an interesting thing. But I think in that, right, in those different communications, you're probably going to continue that, right, with people and keep that up. And I am going, all right, now how do I connect again? All right, we're back. Who can meet me for coffee? What does that look like? And then do I not back out? I don't know about you, but as a person who lives with anxiety disorder, COVID really did a number on some of those fears that I know are not really true. But I think for a lot of us, even if we are not diagnosed with a mental health problem, we experienced a lot of fear from outside sources that caused us to think, wow, do I really want to meet somebody? Is that person safe? And now the world is opening back up again. Are you vaccinated? Are you not vaccinated? Where did you come from? Who did you hang out with before? We've got all these variants. And so there's still a lot of, like I said before, vulnerability and fear in us coming back together. And I think that that really drives a lot of things, because we're not going to ask somebody, well, yeah, okay, if they say, do you want to meet for coffee? I'm probably not going to say, well, are you vaccinated? Who have you been around? Are you licking trash cans? Like, I don't know. Like, are you going to be safe for me to hang out with? And it feels so to be in that space, right?
Absolutely. I wonder too, if like also just reconnecting with people, since this has dominated our lives over the last 2 years, will that be the focus of conversation then too, in a sense where you might find that somebody is in a very different position or situation that you thought they might be prior to COVID? And since this is such a controversial topic and everything that goes along with that, you know, feeling comfortable to be able to just reconnect with people that might now have very different views on things. Or if you go to a coffee shop, do you know if that coffee shop is going to require you to wear a mask or not? So is that going to prompt a specific type of conversation? Are they going to have indoor seating of capability, or will you get there and then have to change your plans and it becomes a hassle if you have to go somewhere else? So many more things to take into consideration. I've noticed even here in Texas that where you'd think it would be more open, they're still enforcing quite a bit of regulations that I was surprised to see. And also hours are completely different. So I'll show up to a place thinking, this is great, I can go in, I can at least pick up my food, what have you. And then there'll be a sign on the door saying, no, sorry, we either don't have enough workers today, or we have to cut down hours for another reason. So I think it just presents so many more issues than trying to meet up with somebody and feeling comfortable reconnecting with them potentially.
Well, absolutely. And I think that those shortages are coming across in not just our restaurants, we're seeing just as consumers, right? We're not seeing social places available as much anymore. Our malls are closing. They're changing on stores. We're doing a lot more things again online, which is a very different thing as well. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Like, there's so many variables and so many variants. So I guess the thing, right, that we want to encourage everybody to do is to think about being proactive in so many of these things and trying your best. I know that I've seen families, some people are vaccinated, some people are not. So family gatherings are not happening, or people are not seeing their grandchildren, or not seeing their aunts and uncles, or not seeing family members. And so we want to think about, as we open up, what's best for you, finding a way to kindly articulate that. And then when you're speaking with somebody else, right, listen to actually hear what they're saying. I found myself practicing that more than anything. I am a talker and I love to hear people's stories. Like, I love to hear people's stories. But a lot of times I find myself, as somebody shares something with me, thinking about what question I'm going to ask next to keep the conversation going. And so we want to encourage everybody to listen to actually hear and not to respond. And so what does that look like to actually process when you're having a conversation? And maybe that is even with the barista at the local coffee shop, or with your server. I don't know if you've eaten out at all, Amy, but in our area, things are very slow. Restaurants are moving more slowly. This is not quick food anymore. And for that is because of all of the shortages of people. And so we've got underworked or understaffed places where people are being overworked and having more demands, which causes more stress. So can you be the kind of person during this time that is showing empathy, that is being more vulnerable, that is offering that kindness and offering that friendship, whether it's just to an acquaintance or to somebody even more important to you, and offering some of those skills, right, that we know are vital for a relationship. So I don't know, for you, I mean, what are your most important relationship qualities? For me, it's, actually somebody noticing me. It's knowing that I've been seen. And so if we think about what that means to actually see people and to be present in that situation, it could really change the way that we interact and the way that we communicate. And that's true whether we're in person or whether we're on our phone. Right? The beauty of the technology thing is that you can have a screen with 14 people and 14 people can have a conversation at the same time. So it's a conversation, but the chat box is going, there's personal conversations happening, right? While this other big picture is going on. That's not typically how we interact with other people. If you're out to dinner and it's a group of 14 people, there are conversations at every end of the table, but they're more one-on-one and you're a little bit more present. So that multitasking that we've believed we can do is frightening because we can't really do that. And I think we're coming face to face with that again. So
definitely. And I love that you pointed out the slowing down, because I think the pandemic forced us to slow down in a very unique way. And while things are starting to pick back up, being far more mindful of being slow in our transition back, especially with relationships and focusing on other people, that just makes so much sense to me. And I'm really glad that you pointed it out and framed it in that way, because we've learned, like you said, now to multitask and to be busy in a different way. And so trying to readjust, we got to give ourselves a minute and slow down.
Right. And I think in saying that, we all have a responsibility to one another, whether it's in our work life, professionally, or our personal life, to not return to that busy, go that we had prior to being shut down in the pandemic. The pandemic, if nothing else, showed me that there are a variety of different ways to get things done. There are a variety of different ways to engage. And there are also my self-care is important for me to be the best that I can be, either professionally or personally, right? And so that presence, that slowing down, that mindfulness, and mindfulness is such a buzzword, right? People hear it, and I know, and even as a person who engages in mindful practices, it's really just being with whatever's in front of you. All of us. So don't be scared, individuals who are listening to this conversation. Don't be scared by that word. It's really just being intentional about being where you're at when you're there. And so when we think about it that way, right, it's a little bit easier to go, okay, I can slow down in this moment. I don't need to be in a hurry. I can leave 15 minutes early so that I get where I need to go. I can take that extra time to engage in that conversation when somebody does approach me. I can say, no, thank you. I can't handle 16 Zoom meetings, one right after the other, because we're walking that line between still online and being in present mode and being with people again. I feel like we're walking a really, really thin tightrope of which world are we in. And I think we're going to find ourselves, as we navigate them, as those worlds coming back together, we're going to navigate some more of that busyness, and we have the potential to find ourselves really overwhelmed again in a very
definitely. No, absolutely. I like that a lot, because I think, and tell me if I'm wrong in thinking this, but something that, I kind of experienced and felt was that a silver lining of the pandemic and shutting down was that it showed us that work-life balance can exist. And that's something that I think Americans in general don't necessarily pride themselves on, because we are expected to work all the time, be as productive as possible. You could only be productive in a workspace, for instance. Like, that was the norm back then. Now we have learned that we can get work done in other ways while multitasking, like you said, which can be productive multitasking too, like getting laundry done or something because you're at the house. So not losing your time to commute. I mean, I remember I lived in England for 2 years as a child, and it was so different that they're similar to us in that they're another Western community. They're just as productive as Americans typically, but they work far less. And there's a better balance where they will take like a break in the afternoon. They'll stop working actually at like between 3 and 5 o'clock. They don't work into all hours of the evening like we sometimes can be expected to, depending on what type of an organization you might work for. And so I think this showed that you can really take a minute, be able to focus on yourself, take that 10-minute walk during your lunch break, or work out in the morning and start a little bit later so that you know that you're going to be more productive that way because you will have gotten out whatever stress or energy if you're a morning workout type of person. And I think you and I both kind of did this over the pandemic, which was great, is that we chose to focus on health and fitness as well. And so I'm down like 26 pounds. I know you've been very successful as well, and it feels so much better. And now that's a priority to me. I'm going to take as many phone calls as I can on a walk. I'm going to find time to do my workout, regardless of how it fits into my schedule, because it's worth prioritizing yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, same kind of thing. And I'm finding that with, as we're opening back up and things are shifting back into normal life, whatever normal is for any of us, right? I am finding myself saying, okay, I can do that meeting, but can we walk while we do that meeting? We can have an in-person meeting, but can we do a walking meeting? Let's take notes on our phone, or let's turn on our voice recorders. If there are things that we need to write down, what does that look like for us? Instead of ordering that pizza, can you bring a salad and I'll bring the fruit? How do we adjust into that instead of us going, all right, we're going to go, and stop some of those prep things that we did. And that's what I think is the biggest takeaway for all of us, right? Is that you are important. You and your life, you get one. And so how are you going to live it to the fullest so that you feel optimal? Because I don't know about you, but I'm a lot more productive most days in my professional life because I feel healthier. And I've taken that time to be with a friend. I've taken that time to listen and communicate. I've reached out. I mean, I actually had somebody I've not spoken to in 30 years, a mutual friend, unfortunately passed away. And this person reached out and was like, I just was thinking about you. And I was like, whoa, like how amazing, right? To reconnect with people and to say, we're valued. Relationships are ultimately the most important thing. And how can you have a great relationship if you're too tired because you haven't eaten well? I mean, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure you have too, about how my body reacts to certain foods. We are definitely, America's very hard. We are definitely a processed food culture. And unlike some of our other counterparts where, in other countries where that's not necessarily how they eat, we are hurting ourselves because of our busyness and our microwavable, let's just drive through kind of thing. And I'm really grateful that I've learned more about the importance of my plate, the importance of more fruits and vegetables, the importance of not supersizing. And I was not a big supersizer anyway, but the importance of not supersizing, right? Nobody needs a 32-ounce steak.
Yep.
And the baked potato, and the appetizer, and the dessert, and the beverages, and the, right? So being able to be more conscious, that's not, I said the wrong word, be more conscious, be more intentional. I think that's what we can all take from the pandemic and in moving forward, right? What do you want to be intentional about? Which relationships matter? Let those go that are toxic. Let it go, right? That is definitely the one thing that we all did. We only talked to the people that were really important.
Very true. Yeah.
Even if it was on social media. We put our energy and invested into things that were important. We watched and binge watched silly no-brainer TV shows with our families. We took time to play Scrabble. We took time to go on walks. In our family, my son became a disc golfer. Our family now disc golfs on a regular basis. I would have never done that before. We didn't have time. My kids were 3 athletes and involved in choir and band and all sorts of other things. There was no time on the weekends for that. The weekends were for going, nobody's doing it. Just lay here. So what does that look like to be intentional about your exercise? To be intentional about how meetings are going to be different, to be intentional about putting on your calendar. I have choir practice every Thursday at 7:00 when in reality, you don't sing a note. And that's just your time for you, right? I think we got really good at that. And I think our nervousness and our worry is that there's going to be an expectation that we lose some of that. And I think that we have the power and we have the ability to say, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to do that. And, the ways that we do that as far as, good skills, besides being good listeners and hearing what people are telling us and engaging with them, is for us to use those I statements. I am a better person when I eat fruit. I am a better person when I exercise before I go to bed or when I first wake up in the morning. I am a better person when I spend time laughing and giggling with the neighbor kids and let the sprinkler go, right? Mm-hmm. What makes you better? What is that? And I think the pandemic gave us all the opportunity to figure that out. And a big fear is that we're going to let that go.
Sure. And I think that's a great point.
Come in.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point too, to recommend that if folks are used to being able to go on an afternoon walk per se, or had been able to be more active during their time at home, and now they're transitioning back to work and commuting and losing time in that way, that I think it's acceptable to be able to suggest walking meetings or working things in, being more flexible with their schedule, because I think the pandemic in general allowed us all that kind of extra leniency, and understanding each other better about specific requests and being understanding of situations, especially because we were all in our own home. So if a dog's barking in the background or you have a child you need to take care of in the middle of a meeting, that was fine. And while it's different being back in the office, perhaps, I think there can still be similar understanding from your colleagues, and especially if you're upfront and open with them. And I don't know about you, Jamie, just to touch on healthy eating before we close out here. So with a lot of the restaurants and things being closed, it really did force me to cook a lot more. And I do like to cook for sure, but it forced me to learn some new recipes, get some more creativity going in the kitchen, which was great. And then, like you said, as a result of trying to then eat the processed food again on like a cheat day or something to enjoy that, it was much harder for my body to tolerate. Did you find similar things? And how did you kind of transition your nutrition and healthy eating yourself?
So one is just, again, that intentionality. I really need to take a day where I prep, and I prep for the week. And some weeks I'm really good at it. This week was 4-H judging. I haven't been very good at it at all. Mm-hmm. But I do find myself if we're eating out, making sure that I have, if I can't cut the fruit myself, that I'm swinging through the grocery store. Instead of driving through the fast food line, I walk into the deli and I grab some fresh fruit, right? And so instead of taking the 15 minutes in the fast food line, I take the 15 minutes and I park my car and I walk into the grocery store. Mm-hmm. So that's a big difference for me, but I know how much better I feel. Or I order the salad with the dressing on the side and put the dressing in a little cup and, put it on my fork and dip it in instead of going for the greasy cheeseburger, right? And everybody in the office wants to go through. So learning what is healthier on a menu, allowing yourself to set those boundaries for me has been really, really a big one. But I do think just the not driving through the fast food and taking the time. I always like, it's easier to drive through the fast food. It's not.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think these are all great tips, and I really appreciate you sharing all these experiences, and especially coming from a place of mindfulness. And if you'd like to learn more, we have lots of great resources on our Live Smart Ohio blog or our Live Healthy, Live Well blog. We also have Facebook pages, so we encourage you to check those out for more resources related to this, or reach out to your local extension office at any time for similar programming. And we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Amy.